the halfway point with a crushing offense and a defense that's coming on. We're going to talk all about it coming at you right now. Welcome back to RGR Football. I'm Ryan, and this is me going rogue on the AFC West, the Chiefs, and the NFL. And at this point in the season, you got to be pretty happy with where we thought these Chiefs would be when we looked at them from the beginning of the season. They stand with the best record in the AFC, and right now, they look to be able to have a shot at holding on to that number one seed. The loss in Boston was definitely a hiccup. If they continue to run that tide, then they're going to be a 2 seed at this point. But there are chinks in the armor of the big foe coming up. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to look at the playoff picture at this point, and you can see here that there really are the top 2 dogs, and they've already played, and it's already been a drag out. The Chiefs are definitely right in the battle there. And if they have a bit more favorable record coming up than, say, the Patriots do and the Rams do, the Chiefs are going to be in a position to hold on to that number 1 seed. And if they can do that, and if the playoffs roll through Arrowhead, this is going to be a different scenario for a team that has no problem scoring points this time. When you look at the playoff losses to Pittsburgh and those where touchdowns were few and far between, this is not going to be a problem this particular season. I think even in the cold weather, I don't think that's going to have a terrible disadvantage for this team. They're going to be able to do a little bit of everything. And it comes back to balance. We're going to talk about all the different parts. We're going to talk about Mahomes and Hunt, Sammy Watkins. We're going to look at the defense, what Dee Ford has been able to do, along with the emergence, or at least rising nature, of Breeland Speaks. We're going to look at the linebackers. We're going to talk about Dorian O'Daniel and a couple other things, so stick with me here. But if you're new, hit the subscription and that notification button so you know what's going on. Click a thumbs up if you like what you're seeing, and leave a comment down here so that we know where you're at. As we get into this, we're going to take a look first and foremost at Pat Mahomes. I mean, what can you tell? What can you say that elaborates any more on where he's at with tying Alex Smith's 2017 in terms of touchdown production? 26 touchdown passes in 8 games. That's where I had him at the top range, between here and 32 is what I said preseason, that he would be able to muster for the year. It shows you just how much I underestimated Pat's prowess in this offense and just how much it was going to be able to be suited to his strengths. Even I underestimated how well he was going to play, and I think that's significant. I was not bashful about support for him, but what you see him do is a lot of different things. And we'll start with some of these plays to Sammy Watkins. And Watkins is starting to come on. I think it's been a slow progression. We saw him having a couple of struggles early, and even just a few weeks ago, knowing where he was to be in the game plan. What I've noticed the last 2 weeks is a simplification in what they're asking Sammy to do. And they have a couple of plays. We're going to look at his touchdowns here. And there's a lot of things that go into contributing to what we see from Sammy Watkins. Sammy's first touchdown is a nice little pivot route. He gets himself a linebacker. And that really goes to show you that what Andy Reid can do in getting that matchup. Now, he's going to eat up that cushion, settle down as if it were a zone. The linebacker comes back to him, eats up that gap, and then when Sammy pivots out and accelerates away, there's no way a linebacker can stay with him. This is just how good Sammy Watkins is and what an athlete he is. It's a total mismatch. Now, on the next touchdown, he's running a little drag route, and everybody else clears out that side. Credit here to Tyreek Hill with a nice little block to get him in the end zone. Now, those plays and their specifics are one thing, but as a whole, what Sammy Watkins is able to do is give more options, more things that this defense that they face has to cover week in, week out. And that's going to include the Rams coming up. Zones, mans, it doesn't really matter. There's always somebody that's going to get open. They have enough athletes and guys in particular that can run good enough routes to get somebody open every play. And I think that's really where we're getting to this point. The comfort level within the offense is what Sammy Watkins is putting on display, and that's really important for the second half and for the playoff run. Now, the other guy that we got to talk about, in Kareem Hunt, who had a surge, took kind of a back seat this last game. They didn't have to rely on him, and I do believe that they're still a little bit concerned about overall touches for Kareem Hunt. They kept him on a snap count last season. I think they're still doing that a little bit. We saw a lot of Spencer Ware a week ago. This week, not as much, but overall, not as much for the backs. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. Now, the thing that I want to talk about in particular with his big touchdown run, it was a great hurdle, and I think everybody's pretty impressed with it. And that's been really the talk of the town here for him and for this Chiefs coming away from this. But really what's most important is I think the way not only was the play designed very well, but the quarterback is having an effect, particularly on these running plays, because of the options he has and all those weapons coming together. When you line up in the split backfield, which is a formation that I really, really love for this team, and it doesn't matter whether it's Sherman and Hunt or Ware and Tyreek or Sammy back there or Kelce back there, having two options in the backfield makes two-way goes. Whether it's the option play like we're going to see, and as they run down and try to get Bradley Chubb in particular paying attention to closing down, widening out are the two directions he can go. He chooses to widen out, be protective of both the quarterback and the running back to his strong side. But it leaves the undercutting running back and Kareem Hunt really, really open. It's a nice little pitch. And it gets him, 6 yards down the field before there's contact of any significant kind. And then Kareem does what Kareem does. He takes it on himself at that point. But not only is the line play solid here, but the quarterback fake, the quarterback looking to the outside as though he's waiting to pitch the ball, freezes the defense and allows Kareem to cut up into the heart of the line and have room to maneuver. And that's a really, really undersold part of what Pat Mahomes is doing. It's not just the throws. It's the fakes. It's the motions. It's the little details that you would think a guy with only 9 games under his belt was going to have some more struggles with. But it's really making a difference. And I want to emphasize that before we go any farther. But a couple of side notes on the offense, and that are that Wiley and Reeder played solid. Really, really well, I think, as far as the expectation of guys stepping into new roles, especially a guy acquired just a few weeks ago. And I think it gives them an idea that they're blocking specifically, and they don't have to sustain those blocks as long as they may have in years past. It's an important aspect. But in both the run game and the pass game, there was a number of solid plays. Every now and then they got beaten, and everyone does that. Even Mitch Schwartz got beat last week by Von Miller. It happens. But in getting beat, both these young players that are starting at center and right guard at the moment are showing that they can sustain this offense. Maybe it wasn't quite as high-powered. Pat did have to scramble a lot, but it's enough. It's a start. It's good enough to get the job done. And as they go into the next couple weeks, particularly this week, and we're going to talk about Cleveland in a minute, or towards the end at least, they have a little bit more breathing room in order to get the line purring on all cylinders, chugging on all cylinders, we want to call it. And I just want to point out that while there were a couple of hiccups, I thought that those two guys in particular were really, really the key to just continuing what we've seen to this point in the season. Let me know what you think. Are you impressed with those guys? Are you impressed with the way the offense is playing, even as it rolls on and has some injuries? Let me know in the comments. I want to take a second and talk about Cleveland. We're going to talk about it in the game plan a lot, but I just want to point out this is a pretty interesting scenario that you don't see very often. Have both the head coach and the offensive coordinator pulled back, facing a team that they have to score points against. I want to say, and I'll talk a lot more about it in the game plan video on Friday, but this is an advantage for the Chiefs. It's a little bit tough, but they have to stay focused. And that includes on the defense because there are still some things that have to happen. But on the positive side, we have to talk about Dee Ford first. Dee Ford is really impressive. He is up there at the top of the sack list. We knew that. A 3-sack game will do that generally. But he is leading the league, at least for outside rushers, in pressures, total pressures, hits, hurries, and sacks. And that's really the key. We are seeing Dee Ford better than we even saw him 2 years ago when he did have the sack lead for a couple of weeks. And he's approaching that same total at this point. But we are seeing him be able to take over and run some plays, use his speed, but also play more of a complete game. Not only is he transitioning to power a little bit better, but he's also always got his hands up looking for a strip. And you can see that it's starting to pay off. He had a chop last week, got this fumble this week, and his play in particular is elevating still as we go on through the season. As long as he can stay healthy, he's keeping the seat warm for Justin Houston. When Justin comes back, I think they have to leave Justin on the other side and play him from the right. That's just the way it is, because I don't think Dee Ford gets better when you put him on the other side. And they have to capitalize on his motivation, his playing as he is now. And he's leading what is a depleted group, but he's bringing along Breeland Speaks. Breeland Speaks is, from that play against Tom Brady to where he is now, is almost night and day. Not only is he using his hands better, his hand fighting has improved. He's got his motor is decent in the pass rush. I still think he has to continue, and particularly when the play's away from him, he has to continue to stay focused and keep chasing down the play from behind. But you see him have a lot more success, be in the right place at the right time. I mean, not only is he getting his pass rush where he's getting home.
Oh, bro. Felt great. I was like, yeah, fat people can rush too.
But he's also, even when dropping, the fumble created, he came in from 10 yards back, dove 4 yards to get that fumble recovery. And that's an effort play for a rookie that really doesn't feel comfortable dropping in space in the first place. So I was really happy to see him make that kind of effort and have it pay off. It's something that's going to help the Chiefs as they go along, so they do have the freedom to mix some of their coverages and what they're doing. Bob is certainly not going to back off of that. And it's very important because what we saw from the Rams this last week is they are susceptible to the pass rush. And when you can get Goff off of his spot, that really helps. And they're going to need Breeland Speaks. Hopefully Justin Houston back as well. But they're going to need both of them. They're going to need to rotate heavily. They're going to need to mix it up. They have to bring pressure and get home against that team. But again, getting ahead of myself, we'll talk about that later. And the interesting thing is, one of these sacks that I think it was Ford that got credit for it, but it really came from Reggie Ragland. And we're going to see a play here where, Reggie really transitions, and I liked what we saw from him last week. Very important. But here's a little wrinkle, and it helped Dee Ford get this sack and the fumble and everything else, because what they did was bring A-gap pressure with Reggie Ragland. He actually performed very well. Hitchens, you can tell, is not the blitzer that Ragland is, and that's pretty much what we expected. But Ragland gets home to the point where he puts a wallop on the quarterback as well. It's not just Dee Ford getting there. Officially, I think Dee Ford got the sack and Reggie did not, but I think that might have been a little injustice for the moment. But this kind of attacking style, blitzing, attacking the gaps in the run game, this is what Reggie Ragland does well. This is what he has to do all the time in order to be a solid player down in and down out. Now, that's not the only thing that he did well. We're going to see a couple of plays where he not only covered in space fairly significantly, beat a block, and if it wasn't for a block in the back, he probably would have had a really nice play. But he also had some good run stoppages as well. There's a lot to see from him, and really that pressure play, if it wasn't for Lucas missing the wide open space tackle there, I think they would have had a nice play there as well. And side note, I know Murray played a lot and folks are a little up in arms about Lucas. This is part of the reason. I think the rotation is going to change. I think Lucas plays better in the back, but I'm not sure that they're totally comfortable with him. We're going to talk about the safeties here in a minute. Because before we get to that, we have to talk about Dorian O'Daniel, forever known from this point forward as DOD. And O'Daniel really stepped up. He's got a couple of plays on here on this film that we can see that he is adjusting still, but he's making progress. There are plays that I'm not going to show you where he got hung up, had trouble shedding some of the guards, but that's to be expected. He's a smaller guy. For a linebacker, he's on the small end of it. I had somebody point out to me this week that he reminds him of Donnie Edwards back in the day, but Donnie was tall and long, a good couple inches taller and a good 10, 15 pounds heavier. And that particular spot at the 210 to 225 range, that really makes a drastic difference. And so I think he's doing what he can. He's getting off of blocks when he can, and he uses his instincts well. We're going to take a look at a couple of his plays right here. Here the run's going to go to the right, and O'Daniel is going to read it directly and take on the outside block of the guard. The guard's going to combo and try to come off. And because it's that kind of down block, he already has momentum. He can use his skills to just push down the blocker, stay on his feet barely, and then he gets to the ball carrier and makes a nice play in the open field. Now on the next play, it's going to be a little bit different. He's already seeing it, already driving, And as the pass gets there, Dorian O'Daniel is there just as the ball is. You can see as they take off here, it's going to be Booker in the backfield going out for the pass. And right behind the goalpost is Dorian O'Daniel. You'll see him take off, and the steps will be almost in unison. He accelerates that quickly. He's read it. He has his key in his back, and he's going to meet the ball. The back gets a step, tries to spin, and O'Daniel is right there to take him down. Perfect read, perfect execution, and a great takeoff. Now, what that's going to do overall is continue to allow him to feel comfortable out there. His instincts, his speed off of the recognition is excellent. Exemplary is the word that I was going for. But it allows him to be the athlete they need him to be when they are trying to put a lot of emphasis on being athletes all over the place. Covering that ground is what Bob needs him to do in order for his scheme to function correctly. And he got in some spots where he was next to Ragland in the nickel, and he was next to Hitchens in the nickel. And I think they're mixing and matching. And when Sorensen is able to come back, I think that's going to give him another dimension too. You might see some changes there as well. Now, the last thing, the safeties, they are interesting, and hopefully he can take some of the pressure off of them as well because of the underneath coverage, because the Chiefs got caught in some cover twos that gave them some problems, and not Ron Parker's best game. I'm not going to go through them. There are coverages where he should have been deeper. He should have been back. And Ron still got instincts like a corner. He watches the quarterback, and I think that's part of the problem. Fails to get depth because his eyes are on the quarterback. And I think that's an issue that can be resolved, but it is also part of just how Ron's going to play. He still knows this defense the best of any of these safeties. He can play all of the positions, and I think this experimentation we're still seeing here is going to go on, and as they get guys back and they kind of work through the rotation about who's going to play where. But I do think it's going to settle down. Is it going to be costly at some point? It may. The cover two and the deeper safety roles really want to see somebody like Lucas take that over and let Ron play the intermediate until Eric Berry gets back. We'll talk about Berry when we know something about Berry. But last note, I'm recording this just after the trade deadline. No business going on for the Chiefs. Can't say that I'm shocked. Can't say that I'm disappointed either. I don't know there was anybody out there who was really going to make a difference for them. So that's where I felt like I should leave it. Thank you guys for tuning into the live last week and for watching this one again. I'm going to have the game plan up later in the week. And I'm getting ready to launch another channel that's going to be about tech and beer and stuff. So maybe check that out when it comes out here in the next week or two. Appreciate all your time. Spread the word. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.